In this video, we're going to be continuing on in our journey with freeCodeCamp. This part here, we're going to be building a survey, I believe, a survey form, and we're all going to be doing it from scratch. Okay, so it's going to give us a little bit of hints and what it's looking for, but we're going to be basically building it on our own. Now, I just want to say hello if you're new here. My name's Rob. I'm with PreCodeCamp.com. And I am going to go through this as if I'm an instructor. I'm going to be commenting on each one of these things, on what I'm doing and why am I doing it, and so that maybe you can get something from it. Now, if you are interested in more live learning or more interaction, make sure you check out the links down below in this video, because we do have multiple courses that are not only self-paced, but they're also live as well. So anyways, feel free to check that out also. Let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and see what's going on here with the freeCodeCamp survey form. And it looks like up at the very top here, we are given this little link here. And I have it displayed right now on the screen here for us. I went ahead and queued that up. And it shows us this is what the form that we're going to build, but they still want us to make it our own as we're going through this. So it may look the same as far as the elements go, as far as the text and everything, it may be a little different. So it says, do not copy the demo project. And it looks like on here, it gives us some user stories where it just tells you what the framework or what we are building should do and function. And so it's just telling us on here, hey, you should have a page title with an H1, given an ID of title. And so it's giving us a lot of instructions all at once. And we're used to, if you're familiar with the previous examples that we've been going through, it was doing it by steps and telling us exactly what and where to type. And so now we are given free reign when it comes to this. So we're going to go a little bit off of memory, maybe take a look at some examples. And then down here at the very bottom, it says, make sure that we add this linked style sheet and provide that 8 of the styles. Looks like we are able to run tests on our code. And down here, it says that it must pass all of these tests here. So even though we have user stories up here that go all the way down to 16, it looks like we have 44 things that need to be tested. So that's going to be our little thing that we're going to do is we'll try to chapter this out here based off of user story, because it seems to be sequential if I'm taking a real quick look at it on exactly what it is wanting us to do line by line. Now, one of the things that I'll always tell you or tell students as well that I'm teaching is that it's okay to make mistakes. As we're going through this, you'll see that I'll probably make some mistakes as well, but we'll correct it and adjust for the test along the way. Things are very nitpicky when we have unit tests, and like I said, we may misspell something and the test will fail, but we can fix it, right? So it's okay to make mistakes. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so before I even get started on user story number 1, and this has been a theme throughout freeCodeCamp's lessons, is it always tells us, hey, let's go ahead and make sure that we're starting off our HTML page correctly by doing a doc type. So that's what I'm going to do here. And we want to specify that it is HTML. Okay. The next thing that I would do before starting up a web page here is we need to add our HTML tags. So I'm going to do HTML. And then I'm always going to close it off here to make sure that I don't forget. Let's see here. Next, I believe I would do a head in here. And remember the head section, that's going to contain things like our style sheet that we need to put in there. Okay. Speaking of that, I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter key. And just so I don't forget, I'm going to grab this code snippet that it wanted us to make sure that we included. And I want to apply it right there. And then after the head, of course, we get into the body. And that's where everything is going to be displaying in our preview. So I'm going to open up another tab over here where we can actually take a look and preview what we actually type in as we go through some of these user stories. So user story number 1. It says on here that we would like to have the page title here be an H1 element, give the ID of title, and we should put something inside there. So again, we're not trying to rebuild what the survey form that freeCodeCamp gives us. We're going to be building our own. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do an H1 and I'm going to give it an ID here of title. And then I'm going to close off the H1 tag by putting that slash right there. Okay, so what kind of title do we want to give this? I'll just go ahead and do a PreCodeCamp, and then we'll say information. Okay, so you can start already seeing that stuff is showing up on the page. We have our H1 element, and I believe that is going to check mark us for the user story number 1. Now, if I take a look at user story number 2 here, it says we should add a P element with the ID of description. And if we take a look at over here, it just says, thank you for taking the time to help us improve the platform. And so I'm going to come over here and do a P tag, and then I'm going to close it off, and then I'll give it an ID here of description. Okay. So inside the description here, I'm just going to put in here, fill out the form to request more information. All right, perfect. I'll go ahead and add a period on there. And so that is going to be user story number 2. So user story number 3 says you should have a form element with the ID of survey form. So that's going to be next in our body. So let's go ahead and do that. Form, give it an ID. We're going to set that equal to survey form. And then we want to close that off as well. So that is user story number 4. Now inside the form element, you are required to enter your email as an input field with the ID of email. So we got a couple things that we are going to take a look at. One is the input field, and input fields are void elements. We're just going to do input. Void elements mean that we don't have to put a closing tag on this one. And so we want to give it an ID and set that equal to email. And then I believe that on here it says that it needs to be required. So we're going to put required on there. And then the next thing that I will do here is, because I believe that this is user story number 6. Yep, user story number 6, it says, make sure that the email is formatted correctly. And this is where we're going to give it a type here, and we're going to set that equal to email. And this is where it's going to look for those common things that an email would have, the @ sign, the .com, .edu, those types of things that make an email valid when you click that submit button. So that is user story number 4 and number 5. So before I get ahead of myself here, that is 4 and 5 and 6, but I did forget the 4 part, which is the name. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to put it up here. And the ID for this one is going to be name, and then the type is just going to be text. And so both of those are required, I believe, for us to use. Now inside the form, it says it also wants to give you the ability to enter the number. Let's kind of see what the survey did for freeCodeCamp to get an idea. So we have the name, we have the email, and then they did age. And so we can do the same thing. And it does not tell us to put required for it. Let's go ahead and go back here. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to do the number. So we're going to do input, give it an ID. We're going to set that to number, and then we are not going to make it required. And I believe we can make this a type and set that to number as well. And we'll close this off. So this one is user story number 7. Number 8, it tells us that the input should not accept non-numbers. So we did that with the type of number. And then we want to put a min and max on here. And looks like we can choose anything that we want. And for mine, I'm going to have it be an age as well, with the minimum age being, we'll say 18, and the maximum age we're going to set to 99. Not that anybody that old would want to learn to code, right? So I believe that helps me out here. And we can double check a few things here. We see that because this is a type of number, that we get these arrows on here, and I am able to increase it. Notice that it starts off at 18. I can't go any lower, so my minimum is working. And if I try to type in 100, and I can't go any higher than 99. Once we hit that submit button, if I were to manually type in 100, it would not allow that. I believe that is good for number 9. Let's keep on going. All right, we're moving on now to this part right here. So it says for the name, the email, the number fields, you can see we have corresponding labels. So we want to have label elements for the form. And there's usually a couple thoughts about how do you want to do your labels, the input fields. And I'm going to bring up this article here. This one comes from CSS Tricks. There's something here called implicit labeling, and then there's explicit labeling. And so you can see here where the label is wrapping the input field, okay, where they're calling it hugging it. And then we also have the explicit where we're utilizing that keyword for, and it matches the ID that you see here. Now, they say here that, what's the best practice? And they said the best idea here is to use explicit labeling instead of implicit. So the way that we're going to go through this is we're going to apply a label, utilize that keyword for, and that should hopefully work with the test. Notice that it's not wrapping the input field that you see here, okay? So this helps out with screen readers and gives a little more accessibility to your form. So let's go ahead and go back to the code here. It wants us to put label elements, and we do need to make sure that we're utilizing the keywords on each one of these. So one label is going to get the name, another one's going to get the email, and then the other one is going to get the number, okay? So that's what we're going to do for this. So this is going to look a little bit repetitive, but that's okay. It gives us practice. So we're just going to put a label here, and we're going to use the keyword for, and then we're going to match this up with what does this label go to? What ID does it go to? And of course it goes to the name. Next on here, we're going to give it an ID. We're going to set that equal to the name label. And then we're going to go ahead and close this off, and then we're going to put name, and then we're going to close off the label. So that's going to be the tedious task going through each one of these. So I want to go ahead and pause the video and fill in the rest. Okay, so this is what I ended up doing here. If we take a look, we have the name right here. We put that for, and then that's the name. We updated the ID, we got name, label, and then I just put a name here. So that is the part that you already saw. And then I went to the next one, which is, it's going to be the label for the email, and then we do the email label, and then we just put email in here, okay? The next part here is going to be for the number, and so I'm just going to put age here, because that is what this one is going to be for, okay? And I put for the number, and then we did a number label. User case number 11 here, it says for the name, email, and number input fields, you can see that there is going to be placeholder text that gives a description of the instructions for each field. And so I'm going to go ahead and come into the input fields of each one of these, and I'm going to type the keyword or the attribute here of placeholder. Now, placeholder does allow us to put text in between this attribute right here, as long as the field is empty. For example, I can say, enter your name. And you'll see that automatically right here, this little helper text, this placeholder text is now appearing up here. So really, that's all it's asking us to do is put that in each one of these. And so I'm going to copy this and bring it down to the next one. So for the email, we're just going to put enter your email, okay? So that changed it. And then as far as the age, it wants us to do this one as well. So I'm going to create placeholder text for it, and I'm just going to put age because it's super duper small. And as you can see, it's even cut off right here. Anyways, hopefully that will fix that part, and that is step number 11. And then we'll move on here to step number 12 here. So step number 12, or user story number 12 here, it tells us inside the form element, we should have a select drop-down element. And the element should have an ID of drop down and provide at least 2 options to choose from. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to create a new element, obviously, and that is going to be the select. So I'm going to go ahead and type the word select, And then it did say that we want to give it an ID of dropdown. So ID equals dropdown. And then I'm going to go ahead and close it off here with the select. Okay. So inside here, this is where we can put our options. And our very first option we'll put in here of the question that I'm thinking of is that we would like to collect is, do you have 2 monitors? And this one's just going to be a simple yes or no. And so we'll do an option here and we'll do yes, and then we'll close off that option. And in here, I am going to give it the value of yes, just to be consistent here. And then I'm going to copy this and go ahead and do the no option. Okay, so let's see if that satisfies that. I'm just going to reread this again. Inside the element, you should have a select dropdown with an ID of dropdown, at least 2 options. So I believe that is good for user story number 12. And then it looks like we are going to do something else here and move on to user story 13. That should be good for it. So before we move on to number 13, I do want to fix this part here. Let's go ahead and change that to a no. And then the next thing that I'm going to do here for number 13, it says, go ahead and create like a form group. It needs to have at least 2 radio buttons on there. And so what I'm going to do, and if we take a look at what they did, is they just said, hey, would you recommend FreeCodeCamp to a friend? And here's your radio buttons that they're wanting you to use here. But for us, we're going to come over here and we are going to do something a little bit different. So here is where we're going to start this off with. And the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do an input field here. And this input is going to be of type radio. Okay. Again, these input fields are void elements. Now, part of the instructions there, it says that each one of these need to have the same name attribute. So we're going to group this by name. And the question that I'm going to be asking on this form here is, do you have any coding experience? And we're going to do none, some, and I feel like I'm an expert. Okay. And so that's what we're going to ask. And so we're going to do this one with none. So we're going to do the value. We're going to set that to none. And here we're going to go ahead and do the following. All right, now I know it doesn't specifically say this, but I am going to wrap a label around this. And the reason why is I'm going to make it display some text here utilizing this label. And we're just going to put the keyword of none. And you can see that is filling in just fine there. And then I'm going to close off the label here. Okay, so now we have one that is complete, but I do need to put the name on here. This is the name attribute, and this is what we can put in here to reference when we're collecting the data. And we're going to put in here for the name, we're going to use experience level. Okay, and we just want to make sure that is consistent throughout. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it. And then the 2 things that I just need to change is what's inside the label and then the value. So I'm going to put some, and then I'm going to put in here expert. And for the values, I do need to update those, and same thing for right here. Okay, so I believe that should help us with number 13.
All right, so I think that we're on 14. So it says inside of the form element, you can select several fields of a series of checkboxes, which must have a value attribute associated with it. And so what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to pose the question of what best describes you as far as liking, for example, how do you like to learn, right? Is it going to be through videos, through one-on-one tutoring, groups? Those are the types of things that I would like to ask. Down here, I'm going to go ahead and just create a few checkboxes here. And let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing that we did for the checkboxes. I'm going to wrap this in a label first. So we're going to do a label, and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap the input field. I'm going to go ahead and set the type here, and this is going to be checkbox. I'm going to get one of these looking okay, and then I'm going to copy and paste. So I have the checkbox. Let me go ahead and scroll up here. And the value for this one, I'm going to go ahead and do the following. We'll say if they check mark this, then I want this to equate to video. so that they enjoy video. Then I'm going to close off, and then I'm going to do video, and then close off the label. Okay, and so that gave me the checkbox here for the video that you see right here. And so I want video, I want tutoring, and then I want group. So let's see how that one works. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to go ahead and paste, put that in there. This one's going to be group, and then my last one, I'm going to do mentor, and then put the value and set that to mentor. So I think that satisfies the need here for the number 14 for the user case here. I believe that works. Cool. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, so number 15 here for the user story, it says inside the form element, you're presented with a text area for additional comments. And so we can just come down here and do additional comments. So we'll just do an input, but this is going to be a text area, it says, right? So we're going to do text area instead of an input. And this one does get 2 of them, and it doesn't tell us to label anything with an ID or anything. And so I'm wondering if it's going to need that later on. It just says a text area. So we'll see. We may have to come back to this one. And then inside the form element, you're presented with a button with the ID of submit. And so I don't know if it's looking for an input field that is going to be a submit, or is it actually looking for a button? And let's see down here if it gives us any kind of clue. You should have an input or a button element. So I guess it really doesn't matter from that aspect. We'll just go ahead and make it an input field for this one. And we're on number 16 here. So let's go ahead and do input. And we want the input for this, the type to be submit. And I believe that it needs to have an ID of submit as well. So there we go. And let's go ahead and save the code here. And let's test out what we've got so far. So let's go ahead and run these tests here. And it looks like we are good to go from this standpoint. So we completed 1 of 5. And then it says submit and go to the next challenge. We're going to go ahead and do that. So we finished this part here, and I'm just going to be a little bit real with you on this. Very anticlimactic. I mean, our form looks really horrible. I really wish that it would have went into more of the styling aspect. And if that is something that you are wanting me to do in the video, to go above and beyond of what the instructions were, then I'll be more than happy to make a video on how would I go about styling this. And so if that is something that you'd want, let me know in the comments down below, and we'll see you in the next video. So hopefully this helps you along in your journey, because this form looks like garbage right now, but maybe the intent was making sure that we knew how to put the HTML elements all together. But anyways, we'll see you in the next video. All right.